The winter air bit at Mark Turner's face as he hiked through the Montana wilderness. 3 years after leaving military service as a combat medic, he found peace in these solitary treks. The pine trees stood tall around him, their branches heavy with snow. Mark adjusted his backpack and checked his compass. Just another routine day guiding himself through the backcountry. Until it wasn't. The flash came first, bright blue cutting through the evening sky. Then the sound, a deep rumble that shook the ground beneath his boots. Mark's instincts kicked in immediately. Something had crashed about half a mile east of his position. "What the hell?" he muttered, already changing direction. Whatever it was, plane, helicopter, meteor, there might be people who needed help. The smoke led him to a clearing where the trees had been flattened in a perfect circle. In the center sat what could only be described as a ship, but unlike any aircraft Mark had ever seen. Its metallic surface gleamed with an otherworldly sheen despite the damage to one side. No markings, no windows, nothing that resembled human design. Mark approached cautiously, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. The logical part of his brain told him to turn back, to call authorities. But the medic in him pushed forward. Someone might be hurt. A section of the hull had split open, creating a jagged entrance. Mark pulled out his flashlight and peered inside. The interior glowed with soft blue light, revealing a cockpit filled with strange symbols and flowing patterns instead of buttons or screens. That's when he saw her. She lay crumpled near what must have been the pilot's seat. Humanoid, but clearly not human. Her skin had a faint bluish tint, and where hair should be, delicate tendrils moved slightly with her shallow breathing. Dark liquid, blood, pooled beneath her slender form. "Hey," Mark called softly, knowing she probably wouldn't understand. "I'm here to help." Her eyes opened, 3 of them, arranged in a triangle on her face. The center eye was larger, a brilliant purple that seemed to look through him rather than at him. She tried to move but winced in pain. Mark's training took over. "Stay still," he said, kneeling beside her. The wound on her side looked bad, but the bleeding followed patterns similar to human physiology. He quickly removed his first aid kit from his pack and set to work. The alien watched him warily, but didn't resist as he applied pressure to the wound. When he began cleaning it, she reached out and touched a small device on her wrist. Suddenly, images flooded Mark's mind. A ship much larger than this one. Creatures with sharp features wearing dark armor, weapons firing, and this smaller craft breaking away in escape. Mark gasped as the mental connection broke. "You're running from something," he whispered. She touched the device again. This time, he saw stars, maps, and finally Earth. She had chosen this planet specifically, but he couldn't understand why. The alien's 3 eyes blinked slowly as Mark finished bandaging her wound. She was stable for now, but needed better care than he could provide in a crashed ship. "I have a cabin," Mark said, making gestures he hoped conveyed his meaning. "Not far. We can go there." The alien seemed to understand. She tried to stand but stumbled. Mark gently helped her up, supporting her weight against his side. As they stepped out of the ship, she pressed something on her wrist again. Behind them, the craft shimmered and disappeared from view, though Mark could still feel its presence. Night was falling fast. Mark looked at the strange being leaning against him and made a decision that would change everything. "Let's get you somewhere safe," he said, and began the journey back through the darkening forest. The cabin stood alone in a clearing, simple but sturdy. Mark struggled to open the door while supporting the alien's weight. Once inside, he helped her to his bed, where she collapsed with a sound like chimes in the wind. "This is home," Mark said, knowing she likely didn't understand his words, but hoping his tone conveyed safety. "You can rest here." He built a fire in the wood stove, casting warm light across the small space. The alien watched his every move, her 3 eyes blinking at different times. When Mark approached with water and some leftover stew, she sat up slowly. She touched her wrist device again. Images flowed into Mark's mind. Gratitude, relief, and something else. Fear. "You're welcome," he replied. "Are you hungry?" The alien examined the food carefully before taking a small taste. Her face changed color slightly, shifting from blue to a lighter turquoise, before she began eating with surprising speed. Over the next 2 days, they developed a simple way to communicate. The alien, who showed Mark an image of herself being called Ilara, called project basic concepts through her device. Mark learned she came from a world with 2 suns and 3 moons. He also discovered she was important somehow, though the exact details were unclear. On the 3rd morning, Mark woke to Ilara shaking him urgently. Her device sent him images of approaching danger. "What is it?" he asked, instantly alert. She projected images of dark ships and armored beings, the ones he'd seen before. They were coming. How close? Mark grabbed his backpack and began shoving in supplies. Ilara pointed upward, then held up 4 fingers. 4 ships, 4 hours. He wasn't sure, but it didn't matter. They needed to move. Within 20 minutes, they were in Mark's old truck, bouncing down the forest service road. Ilara kept looking at the sky, her tendrils moving nervously. When they reached the highway, Mark headed south. His friend Tom had a hunting cabin near Yellowstone that few people knew about. Halfway there, Ilara suddenly grabbed Mark's arm. She pointed at the rearview mirror. A black vehicle was following them, keeping a consistent distance. "Could be nothing," Mark said, but turned off at the next exit anyway. The black vehicle followed. Mark's military training kicked in. He made several quick turns through a small town, then accelerated onto a dirt road. The black vehicle kept pace. "Not good," he muttered. Ilara's device activated, showing Mark images of the beings who pursued her. They weren't just aliens. They were called the Vex, hunters from a warrior race. Then she showed him something new. A regal male alien with similar features to Ilara, but with tendrils that glowed like starlight. A crown-like structure adorned his head. "Your father?" Mark guessed. Ilara nodded. More images followed. Her father leading their people. The Luminar, a peaceful civilization rich in resources. The Vex attacking Luminar outposts, demanding control of something important. Ilara being sent away for protection. "You're the king's daughter," Mark realized aloud. A princess. The black vehicle was gaining on them. Mark swerved onto a logging road, hoping to lose their pursuers. The truck bounced violently over the uneven ground. "Why Earth?" Mark asked between jolts. "Why here?" Ilara's next images showed Earth as a backwater planet, unimportant in galactic politics. The perfect hiding place, until her ship was damaged during pursuit. As they crested a hill, Mark saw 3 more black vehicles waiting ahead. "Damn it!" He slammed on the brakes and spun the wheel. The truck skidded sideways, nearly rolling before stopping at the edge of the road. Ilara's device flashed urgently. Mark saw images of dense trees, a river, and mountains beyond. "Through the forest?" he asked. "On foot." She nodded, her eyes reflecting determination. Mark grabbed his pack. "Then we run." The forest grew thicker as Mark and Ilara pushed deeper into the wilderness. 3 days had passed since they abandoned the truck. Mark's military training kept them moving, using streams to hide their trail and traveling mostly at night. Ilara was getting stronger, but the concern in her 3 eyes never faded. "We need to find somewhere to rest properly," Mark said, more to himself than to her. They crested a hill and spotted a small research station in the valley below. Solar panels glinted on the roof. A satellite dish pointed skyward. 2 vehicles were parked outside. Too risky, Mark decided, turning away. Ilara grabbed his arm. Her device activated, showing him images of the station, but with strange symbols overlaid on it. She pointed urgently. "You know this place?" Mark asked. Before she could respond, a voice called from behind them. "Don't move." Mark froze. A woman stepped into view, rifle aimed at his chest. She wore hiking clothes but moved with military precision. "Hands where I can see them," she commanded. Mark raised his hand slowly. "We don't want trouble." The woman's eyes widened when she spotted Ilara. Instead of surprise, recognition flashed across her face. "Luminar," she said simply. "You're a long way from home." Mark stared in shock. "You know what she is." The woman lowered her rifle slightly. "Dr. Olivia Reed. And yes, I know exactly what your friend is." She studied Ilara with interest. "The question is, why is Luminar royalty on Earth?" Ilara's tendrils rippled with what Mark had learned was excitement. "Wait," Mark said. "How do you?" "You should come with me," Olivia interrupted. "The Vex have drones scanning this area. You're not safe out here." 20 minutes later, they entered the research station. Despite its ordinary exterior, the inside was filled with advanced technology. Screens displayed star charts and tracking data. 4 other people worked at various stations, barely glancing up when they entered. "Welcome to Project Sentinel," Olivia said. "We've been monitoring extraterrestrial activity on Earth for 8 years. "That's impossible," Mark said. "The government would know." "Who do you think funds us?" Olivia handed him a cup of coffee. "Just not officially." Ilara moved to a screen displaying a map of stars. She pointed to a bright cluster. "Yes, that's your home system," Olivia confirmed. "We've been watching the conflict between the Luminar and the Vex for some time." She turned to Mark. "Your friend here is Princess Ilara, daughter of King Theron. The Vex have been trying to force the Luminar to surrender their planetary system's resources. Taking the king's daughter would give them significant leverage." "How do you know all this?" Mark asked. A tall man approached, carrying a device similar to Ilara's wrist unit. "Because we've had contact before." He nodded to Ilara. "I'm Jake, communications specialist." Ilara activated her device. Images flowed to everyone in the room. Her ship being attacked, her emergency landing, Mark saving her life. "You've done well keeping her alive," Olivia said to Mark. "But this is bigger than just one princess. Earth is just one small battleground in a much larger conflict." Jake turned to a larger screen. "We've detected 4 Vex scout ships in Earth orbit. They're scanning for Luminar energy signatures." "Can you contact her father?" Mark asked. "King Theron needs to know she's alive." Olivia and Jake exchanged glances. "We can try," Olivia said, "but it's risky. The Vex monitor all subspace communications." Ilara stepped forward, placing her hand on a console. The screens flickered, then displayed a series of symbols. She was interfacing directly with their system. "She's creating a secure channel," Jake said, amazed. "She's using royal protocols I've never seen before." The largest screen flashed, then stabilized. An image appeared. The same regal figure Mark had seen in Ilara's projections. King Theron's face showed shock, then overwhelming relief as he saw his daughter. "My child," he said, his voice translated through the system. His eyes moved to Mark. "And the human who saved her." Ilara sent a stream of images to her father. The king's expression grew grave. "So the Vex found you." He looked directly at Mark. "Human, I owe you a debt I cannot repay. You have saved what is most precious to me in all the universe." "What happens now?" Mark asked. "Now," King Theron said, "we must get my daughter home before the Vex realize where she is. And humanity must prepare, because your planet has just become far more important in a war you didn't know existed." The faces around the table were grim as King Theron's image flickered on the screen. The connection was weak, deliberately kept minimal to avoid Vex detection. "I cannot send a rescue ship," the king said, his tendrils drooping in what Mark now recognized as an expression of worry. "The Vex have blockaded our main worlds. Any large vessel would trigger open warfare across 3 systems." Ilara's 3 eyes closed briefly in disappointment. Mark found himself placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "There must be another way," he said. Olivia spread a map across the table. "There is." She pointed to a location deep in the Arctic Circle. 2 years ago, a Luminar scout ship crashed here. We recovered it before the public or the Vex knew about it. You have one of our vessels. Kane Theron leaned forward, his image distorting slightly. It's damaged but mostly intact, Jake explained. We've been studying it at a research facility. The power core still functions. Ilara's device activated, sending questions to Jake's mind. Yes, he responded. If you can repair the navigation system, it could reach low orbit. From there, perhaps your father could arrange a rendezvous with a smaller craft. King Theron nodded. My personal courier could reach Earth undetected, but only if the timing is perfect. We'd need to travel 3,000 miles north, Mark noted, studying the map. Through territory the Vex are already searching. Olivia tapped her tablet, displaying satellite images of black vehicles and disguised agents at roadblocks across several states. They're watching airports, train stations, and major highways. But they don't know about this facility yet, which gives us one advantage. What's that? Mark asked. A transport plane, she said, pointing to a hangar visible from the window. Modified for stealth, we can get within 200 miles of the Arctic facility. From there, it's overland by snowmobile. King Theron's image flickered again. I must go. Maintaining this connection risks detection. His 3 eyes focused on his daughter. Ilara, remember your training. The future of our people depends on your safe return. The king's gaze shifted to Mark. Human, I entrust you with my greatest treasure. Guide her home, and the Luminar will forever be in your debt. The transmission ended. The room fell silent until Olivia spoke. We leave at dawn. Pack only essentials. That night, Mark couldn't sleep. He found himself on the facility's roof, watching the stars. The world had changed in less than a week. Aliens existed. He was part of a plan to get a princess back to her homeworld. He heard soft footsteps behind him. Ilara joined him at the railing, her tendrils glowing faintly in the darkness. She activated her device, sharing images of her home. Crystal spires rising from azure seas, flying creatures with multiple wings, gardens where plants responded to music. It was beautiful. It looks amazing, Mark said quietly. More images came. Ilara in ceremonial robes, standing beside her father at important functions, training with mentors in what appeared to be science and diplomacy. You miss it, Mark observed. Ilara nodded. Then she showed him something new, images of himself as she saw him. In her vision, he glowed with an inner light when he treated her wound, when he protected her in the forest, when he spoke up during the planning. Mark felt his face warm. I'm just doing what anyone would do. Ilara's device projected disagreement. She showed scenes of the Vex attacking innocent Luminar, of worlds conquered and stripped of resources. Then she showed Mark again, standing against this darkness. I'm just one person, he said. Ilara reached out, her slender blue fingers touching his hand. The sensation was like gentle electricity. Through her device, she shared a Luminar saying, sometimes one person is enough to change everything. Mark looked back at the stars, wondering which one was her home. We're going to get you back there, he promised. Ilara's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. What he'd learned was their version of a smile. She showed him one last image, the 2 of them standing together under Luminar's twin moons. The meaning was clear even without words. This wasn't just about getting her home anymore. Something had changed between them, something neither had expected. First, we need to survive tomorrow, Mark said, glancing at his watch. We should get some rest. As they left the roof, he realized how quickly his life had transformed. From solitary wilderness guy to key player in an interstellar conflict, and possibly something more to an alien princess. The transport plane cut through cloud cover, engines humming at a pitch designed to avoid detection. Inside, Mark checked his gear while Ilara studied maps of the Arctic facility. Olivia, Jake, and 2 other agents, Ben and Tara, completed their small team. ETA 20 minutes, the pilot announced. Tara approached Mark with extra thermal gear. You'll need this. It's -40 out there. Thanks, Mark said, noticing how Tara kept glancing at Ilara. Something in her eyes made him uneasy. Ilara suddenly activated her device, sending Mark an urgent image, a warning sense, danger approaching. What's wrong? He whispered. Before she could respond, the plane banked sharply. Warning lights flashed in the cabin. We've got company, the pilot shouted. 2 craft on intercept course. Not ours. Olivia rushed to a monitor. Vex scouts. They shouldn't have found us. Unless someone told them, Jake said, his eyes narrowing at Tara. Tara pulled out a small weapon. Nobody move. Her voice had changed, harder now. The Vex just want the princess. Nobody else has to get hurt. You betrayed us, Olivia said flatly. They offered me technology beyond your imagination, Tara replied. Do you know what they can cure? Cancer, Alzheimer's, everything. She motioned with the weapon. Now move away from her. Mark stepped between Tara and Ilara. She's not going anywhere. Tara's finger tightened on the trigger. Don't be stupid, Mark. The Vex will get what they want eventually. Why? Mark demanded. Why is one princess so important? Tell him, Tara said to Ilara. Tell him what you really are. Ilara's 3 eyes blinked rapidly. She activated her device, but instead of sending images to just Mark, she projected them for everyone to see. The images showed Ilara as a young child, being taken to an ancient temple. Scientists performing tests, looking amazed at results. Her father looking both proud and worried. Then images of her DNA, but unlike any DNA Mark had seen. It glowed with patterns that somehow looked like keys. The ancients, Olivia whispered. The lost technology of the first ones. Ilara nodded, continuing the projection. The images showed massive ships, peaceful worlds, then terrible weapons. Technology that could heal planets, or destroy them. Knowledge that disappeared millennia ago, except for fragments. The Luminar royal family carries genetic markers, Jake explained, watching the projection. They're living keys to the ancients' technology archive. Tara scoffed. Keys to power that could rule the galaxy. That's why the Vex want her. The plane lurched again. The pilot's voice crackled through the intercom. Brace for evasive action. Mark grabbed a handhold, keeping his eyes on Tara. You're wrong. The Vex don't want to heal anyone. They want weapons. Ilara's projection changed to show Vex attacks. Worlds left barren. You've been lied to, Mark told Tara. Is that the future you want to help create? Doubt flickered across Tara's face. The plane banked hard again, throwing everyone off balance. Mark lunged for the weapon, grappling with Tara as they crashed into the wall. The gun fired. A panel exploded in sparks. Hull breach, shouted the pilot. We're losing altitude. Ben managed to subdue Tara while Mark rushed to Ilara. Are you okay? She nodded, but her attention was on the breach. She moved toward it, pulling something from a pouch at her waist, a small crystal that glowed blue. She pressed it against the damaged hull. The crystal melted, spreading like liquid metal until it sealed the breach. Ancient technology, Jake said in awe. Olivia checked the monitors. We've lost the Vex scouts in the storm, but they'll find us again. She looked at Mark and Ilara. We need to land now and continue on the ground. As the plane descended toward a snow-covered expanse, Mark realized the truth had become much more complicated. This wasn't just about saving a princess anymore. It was about keeping the most dangerous technology in the galaxy out of the wrong hands. Wind howled across the Arctic landscape, whipping snow into blinding clouds. 3 snowmobiles cut through the storm, leaving trails that quickly vanished. Mark drove the lead vehicle with Ilara clinging to his back. Her body temperature had dropped dangerously in the extreme cold despite the thermal gear. 2 miles to the facility, Olivia shouted over her radio. Vex ships are circling the area. The research station appeared through the snowfall, a cluster of low buildings surrounded by a fence. No lights shone from within. "Something's wrong," Jake said as they approached. "Security should have challenged us by now." They stopped at the gate. Van used an access card, but nothing happened. "Power's out," he said. Mark examined the fence. "We need to get inside now. Ilara can't stay in this cold much longer." They found a section where snow had drifted high enough to climb over. Once inside, they approached the main building cautiously. The door hung open, swinging in the wind. "Flashlights only," Olivia ordered. "No radio communication." They entered the dark facility. Their lights revealed overturned furniture and signs of struggle, but no bodies. "The Vex have already been here," Jake whispered. Ilara suddenly pulled at Mark's sleeve, pointing down a corridor. Her device activated, showing him images of energy signatures he could somehow sense. The Luminar ship was still here, deep underground. "This way," Mark said. They descended through maintenance tunnels until they reached a massive hangar. In the center sat the Luminar scout ship, sleek and silver, damaged but beautiful. Unlike Ilara's small escape pod, this vessel could carry several people. "It's bigger than I expected," Mark said. Ilara moved forward eagerly, placing her hand on the hull. A panel slid open, recognizing her royal DNA. The group entered quickly. "Can you fly it?" Olivia asked. Ilara nodded, moving to what appeared to be the pilot's station. Her fingers danced over symbols that lit up at her touch. "The navigation system is damaged," Jake observed, studying the display. But the engines seemed functional. A thunderous boom shook the facility above them. "They found us," Ben said grimly. Olivia checked her weapon. "How long until the ship is ready?" "The startup sequence has begun," Jake replied, watching Ilara work. "Maybe 15 minutes." "We don't have 15 minutes," Mark said. The decision formed in his mind instantly. He grabbed extra ammunition from the supplies they'd brought. "Keep working on the ship," he told the others. "I'll buy you time." Ilara's eyes widened. Her device projected urgent protest. "I have to," Mark said softly. "You need to get home." Before she could respond, he was moving toward the exit. Olivia followed him. "You'll need help," she said. They positioned themselves at the top of the maintenance tunnel, using crates for cover. They didn't wait long. The first Vex soldiers appeared. Tall figures in dark armor, their faces hidden behind masks with glowing red sensors. Mark and Olivia opened fire. 2 Vex fell, but more kept coming. "Fall back to the second position," Olivia shouted over the gunfire. They retreated, fighting at every turn, drawing the Vex away from the hangar. In a storage room, Mark took a hit to his shoulder. The pain was immediate and burning. "Go," he told Olivia. "Get back to the ship." "Not without you," she insisted. Another explosion rocked the facility. Part of the ceiling collapsed, blocking their return path to the hangar. "Find another way around," Mark said. "I'll hold them here." Blood seeped through his jacket as he took position behind an overturned table. The Vex were getting closer. He counted his remaining ammunition. Not enough. Suddenly, the floor trembled. A different sound rose above the gunfire, the hum of powerful engines. The Luminar ship was powering up. "At least she'll make it," Mark thought. The wall behind him exploded. He turned, expecting Vex soldiers, but instead saw the nose of the Luminar ship pushing through the debris. The side opened, revealing Ilara at the controls, her eyes fierce with determination. She hadn't left without him. Mark stumbled toward the opening, bullets from Vex weapons striking around him. As he reached the ship, a searing pain tore through his leg. He fell forward into the vessel as Olivia pulled him inside. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Ilara's face above him, her tendrils glowing with emotion, and beyond her, through the viewport, the stars growing brighter as they raced toward space. Mark opened his eyes to a ceiling that shimmered like mother of pearl. Soft light filtered through transparent panels that revealed not sky, but the vast sweep of stars unlike any constellation he recognized. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. "You are awake," said a melodic voice. Mark turned his head to see King Theron standing beside his bed. The Luminar ruler's tendrils glowed with a gentle blue light. "Where am I?" Mark asked, his voice rough. He tried to sit up, feeling surprised at the absence of pain. The last thing he remembered was being shot, bleeding on the floor of the Luminar ship. "You are on Lumina, our homeworld," the king said. "You have been healing for 7 days. Our medicine is quite advanced compared to Earth's." Mark looked down at his leg and shoulder. No bandages, only faint silver lines where the wounds had been. "The others? Olivia, Jake. Safe. They chose to return to Earth with our technology to help prepare your people." King Theron moved to a window. "Our courier ship delivered them home secretly." Mark slowly stood, testing his healed leg. It felt perfectly normal. He joined the king at the window and gasped at the view. A city of crystal spires and flowing architecture, exactly as Ilara had shown him. Above, 2 moons hung in a lavender sky. "It's beautiful," Mark whispered. "And safe, thanks to you." The king's 3 eyes regarded him with unmistakable gratitude. "You risked everything for my daughter. For a princess of a world you never knew existed." "Where is Ilara?" Mark asked, suddenly anxious to see her. The king's tendrils rippled in what Mark had learned was amusement. "She has barely left your side during your recovery. I ordered her to rest." He gestured toward the door. "But I suspect she will be here soon." As if summoned by her father's words, the door slid open. Ilara entered, wearing flowing robes of silver and blue that matched her skin. Her tendrils brightened visibly when she saw Mark standing. Without hesitation, she rushed to him. Her device activated, sending him waves of relief and joy. "I'm okay," Mark assured her with a smile. "Good as new." King Theron watched their interaction with thoughtful eyes. "The Vex have withdrawn from your solar system for now," he told Mark. "But they will return one day. Earth needs to be prepared." "I should go back," Mark said. "Help them get ready." Ilara's tendrils drooped. Her device projected images of Mark staying on Lumina. "My daughter has made a proposal," the king said formally. "The Luminar have never had an ambassador from Earth. We know little of your world, your people. Yet now, our futures are connected." Mark looked between them, understanding slowly dawning. "You want me to stay, as an ambassador. You have proven yourself brave, resourceful, and loyal," King Theron said. "Qualities the Luminar value highly. You would be the first human to serve in our Council of Worlds." Ilara's device showed images of all Mark could learn, the good he could do for both worlds. "What about Earth, my home?" Mark asked. "You would travel between our worlds," the king explained, "building bridges of understanding, preparing humanity for its place among the stars." Mark turned to the window again, looking out at the alien city. 6 months ago, he'd been a solitary wilderness guide, haunted by his military past, seeking peace in isolation. Now he stood on another world, offered a chance to help shape the future of 2 civilizations. Ilara moved beside him, her hand finding his. The touch still carried that gentle current of energy, familiar now and comforting. Her device shared one simple image, the 2 of them walking together under Luminar's twin moons. "I accept," Mark said, his decision made. Later that evening, standing on a balcony overlooking the glittering city, Mark watched the twin moons rise. Ilara stood beside him, teaching him words in her language without needing her device. "If someone had told me rescuing you would lead to this," Mark said, gesturing at the alien world around them, "I would never have believed them." Ilara's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. Her smile. She took his hand and pointed to the stars. Through their growing connection, he understood her meaning perfectly. This was just the beginning.